Iceland, a small island nation in the North Atlantic, has been independent for less than a century. However, it rapidly transitioned from an economically underdeveloped country to a developed nation in just over half a century. The capital that enabled Iceland to transform its financial sector originated primarily from its fishing industry. Additionally, during the Cold War, Iceland adeptly navigated between the US and the Soviet Union, securing substantial economic aid from both superpowers. In the 1950s, Iceland had a population of only around 150,000, making it a small and seemingly insignificant country. However, after more than half a century of development, Iceland has become one of the most developed countries in the world. Even after the global financial crisis of 2008, Iceland remains a significant and prosperous nation. During World War II, Iceland, which had not yet gained independence from the Kingdom of Denmark, held a crucial strategic position in the North Atlantic. After Denmark was occupied by German forces, the United Kingdom sent troops to Iceland in 1940 and took over the island's defense. The following year, the United States replaced the UK in managing Iceland's defense. During the years of American military presence in Iceland, the spending by US troops, along with the construction of military bases and other infrastructure, significantly boosted Iceland's economy. The US invested $164 million in military facilities during the war and provided an additional $43 million in aid to Iceland through the Marshall Plan after the war. These financial aids aimed to prevent Iceland from leaning towards the Soviet Union and adopting communism. At that time, the United States still regarded Iceland as a typical third world country. In 1946, the United States and Iceland signed a treaty concerning military bases. Most US troops withdrew from Iceland, but Iceland continued to grant the US the right to use military bases for 6.5 years. Initially, Iceland preferred to remain neutral and was somewhat resistant to the presence of US troops. However, the post-war international landscape changed rapidly. The Soviet Union replaced Nazi Germany as the primary adversary of Western nations, led by the UK and the US, fearing the Red Empire and influenced by the Korean War in the Far East. Iceland announced its decision to join NATO in 1949. By 1951, Iceland allowed US troops to return. Nevertheless, Iceland did not fully embrace the United States. They maintained a complex relationship with the Soviet Union, keeping very good diplomatic ties and engaging in various economic and trade activities with them. In 1953, Iceland and the Soviet Union signed an agreement allowing Iceland to exchange its fish resources for essential supplies such as Soviet oil, cement, and other crucial resources. From 1954 to the end of 1955, Iceland supplied the Soviet Union with 35,000 tons of frozen fish. The Soviet Union became Iceland's second-largest importer of frozen fish, following the United States. In return, the Soviet Union fully supplied Iceland with oil fuel, as well as cement, grains, steel, and other necessities. By 1957, the Soviet Union accounted for 33.5% of Iceland's total fish product exports. At this time, there were naturally communists within the Icelandic government. From the previous overview, it is evident that the fishing industry in Iceland holds a significance comparable to the oil industry in OPEC countries. To this day, Iceland's fishing industry remains a global leader. The convergence of the North Atlantic Current and the cold currents from the Arctic Ocean creates an ideal environment for marine life, fostering a thriving fishing industry. Given the gradual depletion of fishing resources in modern times and the desire to monopolize the fishing resources of the surrounding North Atlantic waters, Iceland passed consecutive fishing restriction laws in 1948 and 1952 to prevent overfishing. These measures immediately drew protests from the UK, which also relied heavily on North Atlantic fisheries. Before this, 30% of Iceland's seafood exports went to the UK. In response to Iceland's new policies, the British began a boycott, reducing their import share to just 10% in an attempt to force Iceland to relent. In response to this situation, Iceland quickly sought to develop new markets. Over the following years, the United States and the Soviet Union, despite being adversaries, became Iceland's most important trading partners. The British boycott inadvertently helped Iceland upgrade its fishing industry. This prompted Iceland to further enhance its fish processing technology and export large quantities of fish products to the United States. Even though the UK lifted its boycott in 1956, the British market never regained its previous prominence in Iceland's trade relationships. In 1958, Iceland announced the extension of its exclusive economic zone from 4 nautical miles to 12 nautical miles. This announcement caused an international uproar. The UK and then West Germany strongly opposed this move. The dispute between the UK and Iceland escalated into what became known as the First Cod War. After the outbreak of the First Cod War, the Soviet Union immediately provided Iceland with a $25 million loan. The US government, considering the geopolitical importance of Iceland far greater than the losses in the fishing industry, suggested that the UK concede to avoid the possibility of Iceland withdrawing from NATO. Under the dual pressure from both the US and the Soviet Union, the UK eventually accepted Iceland's 12 nautical mile fishing limit. However, Iceland granted the UK a 3-year adjustment period, allowing British fishing vessels to operate within the 6 to 12 nautical mile zone in certain areas. Through adept diplomatic maneuvering, Iceland achieved a comprehensive victory both diplomatically and economically. In 1972, Iceland enacted a new law further restricting fishing areas. The UK deemed this action a clear violation of international law, leading to the outbreak of the Second Cod War between the two countries. The Second Cod War was indeed more intense than the first. The UK deployed frigates to the Icelandic waters to protect its fishing vessels, but the Icelandic Coast Guard patrol boats were unyielding, resulting in multiple clashes and collisions. Surprisingly, the Icelandic patrol boats, designed to withstand the harsh conditions of icy waters, inflicted more damage on the British anti-submarine frigates during these encounters. During the Second Cod War, Iceland also developed a peculiar weapon designed to cut the nets of British trawlers. This innovation led to significant damage to many British fishing nets, resulting in heavy losses. Throughout the conflict, the UK remained at a disadvantage. In fact, the British government's stance towards Iceland was not as aggressive as Iceland's stance towards the UK. Similar to the 1958 Cod War, the British government instructed the Royal Navy to withdraw and report to the Admiralty if the Icelanders opened fire on British fishing vessels or warships. Ultimately, the two countries reached another compromise and established a new fishing agreement. The UK was allowed to fish within 50 nautical miles of specific areas for 2 years, but the number of trawlers was limited to 139, and the annual total catch was capped at 130,000 tons. In 1975, the Third Cod War erupted, once again over territorial fishing rights. This time, Iceland extended its exclusive economic zone from 50 nautical miles to 200 nautical miles. This expansion meant that the UK would completely lose its traditional fishing grounds in these waters. Despite British protests, the United States considered ensuring Iceland's stability more important than the UK's loss of fishing areas. As domestic protests against the UK and opposition to the US military presence began to surge in Iceland, the United States did not hesitate to side with Iceland once again, effectively abandoning its British ally. Under pressure, the UK had no choice but to concede. After winning the 3 Cod Wars, seafood exports became a major part of Iceland's economy. From the 1940s to the late 1960s, seafood made up over 90% of Iceland's exports. Since the 1970s, this share has typically been between 70% and 80%. About half of Iceland's foreign exchange reserves come from seafood exports. Iceland's diplomatic and economic success during the Cold War is a prime example of a small nation's rise. The determination and efforts of the Icelandic people were crucial, but so was the aid and support from both the United States and the Soviet Union. This external assistance significantly helped Iceland navigate international relations and achieve prosperity.